Optimism is shrinking, but perhaps not that surprising when you realise that all of this data was brought just after the election here in the United States.
Right. So we did a poll. We do a poll every year, and so we polled roughly 950, mostly startups from around the United States, but also around the world, kind of got their perspective on how are they feeling about the market, what are their challenges, and so that's the main part of the survey. It was interesting just from a timing perspective, because when the timing came out, we saw the highest level of, I guess, lower optimism. So always optimistic.
Technology companies,
you have to be, right? And so what happens, though, is that given the timing, there was just so much uncertainty, we felt that we saw a drop. And so it went from kind of the 70% feeling that this year would be better than last year, to 60, and this year was the lowest we've seen since we were doing this survey, which was 57% believed that 2017 would be better than the prior year.
Along with that, it was interesting that perhaps since then, they've then had on top of the uncertainty some concerns about travel bans being put in place, whether that impacts the reach for talent. One thing that really struck me was there are signs that finding the right talent is actually easier. Can you break down why? Because the main key issue for many an entrepreneur is I can't get the right engineering talent.
Yeah, so it was a slight decline. It's still the hardest part is finding the right talent. It's still the most important thing. So it did decline, and I think it was actually because there's fewer companies that are actually out competing for talent, the same way that they were in 14 and 15.
So they're not expanding so much?
So I think that's good. But I also think that if you took that survey today, with the travel ban and the fear over immigration, that would be higher. Because I think there's going to be more of a concern that can they find the talent? We're not graduating enough U.S. students and U.S. residents actually to fill these tech jobs. And so I think they would actually be more concerned if this survey was done today.
Interestingly, you did in the United States predominantly, but you do also got a lot of companies in China and in the United Kingdom. Is that something, the concern about talent, particularly with the UK in the process of leaving the EU, is it talent that is a worry there as to whether they can lure in EU-based?
Absolutely. We saw the biggest pickup in, I'd say, concern. Definitely their optimism was even lower than it was in the United States. And I think, again, the fear of Brexit and what that was going to entail, we saw that playing out. They're more nervous about being able to try to find that talent for the same reasons in the U.S. It's just more, I guess, front and center when the survey was done in the UK. Will they be able to find the talent? In the UK, will immigration reform, how will that play out? All those sort of things in the UK. So yeah, it's a challenge.
And are entrepreneurs leaving the UK, going to set up shop in Berlin, in Paris, in Stockholm instead? Yeah,
we did, in this survey, we asked the question. So what do they believe they'll be doing over the next 12 to 18 months? And what about 25% of them said is that they're planning to open up an outpost in Europe. A smaller percentage were considering moving their headquarters out of the UK. So yes, we're seeing some, I guess, issues around the Brexit, not as much as I think maybe the market assumed would happen, mainly because you still have to remember technology companies are incredibly resilient, and so they'll figure out a way to deal with it, but we did see a higher level of them looking to Europe.
Let's get upbeat now, because there is a lot to be upbeat about in your report. More M&A, more IPOs. Can you give us a sense of how much more we might be seeing?
So there's a couple pieces to it. So yes, we believe it's going to be better than it was in 2016, but we have to calibrate that. 2016, from an exit perspective, especially IPOs, was a very low bar. So it doesn't take a whole lot to be better than we were in 2016. Our forecast, as we look at it, is that we believe tech venture-backed IPOs will be up roughly 2x to maybe 3x. So going from, I know it's a small base though, going from 15 to maybe 30 or maybe 45. And it's for a few different reasons, right? So one is the bar was low from last year, number one. Number two, you see these companies are continuing to mature, and the market overall is still very strong. So the economic numbers that we're all seeing, they're actually pretty positive across the board. And so they're optimistic for those reasons. And so we're excited about this year being a much stronger year for liquidity and exits.
When we're looking at the M&A exit path, because that does tend to be the more regularly used when it comes to these sort of tech startups, who's doing the buying? Is there any influence from the data in that respect, whether it's from conglomerates from abroad older companies, publicly listed companies within the US, UK, China?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. It's all of the above. So you can look at companies last year that were acquired in traditional industries, so Jet.com getting acquired by Walmart, a very traditional business model. Then you can look at AppDynamics acquisition by Cisco this year, which was a really, really big bellwether. So
Not going for the IPO market, but never mind.
Yeah, no, I know, but you look at the exit, right? You look at the choice that the management team had to make, right? You can look at the cash today versus the IPO, and I'm sure they would have done one great from an IPO perspective, but that's a lot of money to pass up that you get right now. So we're looking at it, and it's both non-tech and technology companies that'll be doing the M&A. And look at the stock market. So their market caps are a lot more valuable. They have a lot of cash. And if we see repatriation in the tax reform, you could see even more M&A. So we're optimistic for those reasons.